we talked with Roxanne and Rachel of Ope Publishing, which publishes area writers' zines. We begin with the origin of the company, how people get involved, and what's next. You can find more conversations on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
My name is Roxanne Aubrey Marina. I go by either Roxanne Marina or Roxanne Aubrey. I was born in the Midwest, but most of my life was spent in New York City working as a production assistant, production artist, print production manager, and then graphic design type stuff. Got married and then moved to the Midwest with my husband, then moved here and then started my own publishing thing. It's pretty cool. I've done publishing in New York, so I know what a regular magazine takes to do. And it is a nightmare to do it that way, so I don't want to do it that way. That's how I got into publishing. I dragged her along.
I'm Rachel McFarland. I'm from La Crosse, and I studied creative writing in college and then also in grad school. And then I've been working kind of crappy jobs for a while, trying to get something published, get something out there. I've written a couple unpublished novels or books. Then I met Roxanne this like a year ago and we just started discussing the whole publishing industry and how demeaning and kind of frustrating it can be. And I started telling her some of my ideas and sent her a story, and she laid it out, saw how good she was at what she did. So we just kind of started going from there.
Just thinking about this now, just in the current environment, you are able to just start publishing or start a podcast like this one. What was the sort of the impetus for Ope Publishing? How did it get its start?
I read her story and I thought it was a damn shame that it wasn't getting published. It was lovely, and there's a way that we communicate for some reason. I don't get this with all clients, but when she kind of starts talking about something, I kind of start seeing images about how it should look. I immediately knew what her story should look like, and I laid it out pretty quickly. And when I showed it to her, she was quite blown away. And I thought, well, all right, we can do this for a lot of different people. There is no reason why writers like her, like Rachel, can't get published other than they don't have representation and they don't know anybody. There are lots of good writers out there who write because they love it. And I'm not saying all of it is good, but a lot of it is. And there's no reason other people can't share in that.
And from what I could tell, visiting your website, you're publishing zines, and I had some experience with those. I mean, they've been around for a long time. For people who don't necessarily know what they are, can you tell us what it is or how that process started?
People were dissatisfied with the state of science fiction that was published, like for mainstream whatever. So people started actually writing letters to each other, like through, I think they got addresses. I forget how they somehow got addresses and just started sending alterations to the story to each other. So the whole mail system was functioning as like people passing around alternate versions or different corrections to what they thought was or whatever the story originally was. And then I think it just kind of bloomed into people creating whole new worlds and like concepts for themselves. And then it was all stuff they were doing either by meeting someone through the mail or, they started something small and started sending it out. So this concept of just publishing your own work, printing your own work and putting it out there, I think pretty much stemmed from that. And then it was sort of a subversive culture and then the punk scene in the 80s picked it up. I went through various iterations and then kind of faded out with the internet. And then it's sort of been coming back with, like, we've found a lot on Instagram and with Instagram for sure. And
I had gone home to visit my mom last year. I found one of these anarchist bookstores that you will find in New York City, right? And they had a whole section dedicated to zines. And I was so enchanted. I mean, just all of this DIY stuff. There was gender stuff. There was LGBTQ stuff. I mean, it was amazing. Just the entire, and just regular poetry and essays and comic books. I was just stunned by how much was done. And there isn't anything like that here, or at least I didn't know of any. And the stuff that we do is it's kind of a cross between the real rough DIY type zine where you just Xerox it and you staple it and you get it out there and you do maybe 20 copies, to an actual real publishing kind of thing. So we typically do somewhere between 50 and 100 prints. We sell those. We hand bind them. We get them printed nicely. We make them look nice. So they're somewhere in between a zine and a published thing, but done really as cheaply as possible. I've worked for nonprofits my whole life, so I really know how to bring things under budget. And just making them look nice so that not only are they wonderful to read and look at, but they're nice to hold and see just sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember seeing them at alternative venues locally in here, La Crosse, from, being at Deaf Ear, maybe at its original location, to the warehouse, to something that was usually just sitting out, and it would just be kind of mind-bending to what traditional magazine that you'd pick up. So for people that want to get involved in this publishing field or with you guys, how do they go about doing that?
Well, they can contact us through our website or our Facebook or our Twitter. So our website is ope.pub. Our Instagram is ope.pub, and the Facebook is Ope Publishing, and Twitter is Ope Publishing, and Etsy is Ope Publishing. But you can find anything out about us through all of those different things. And we take submissions via the web, via email. Anybody who writes anything that's interesting, different, poetry, essays, anti-whatever, we're interested.
Too.
And art.
We worked with a local kind of cartoonist guy in town, and he did our most recent one, and we actually had the art first and then built a story based on his art. So it's really trying to mix visual and writing, I think, has been kind of an important part of it. It's never just been writing. We've always had visual with it too.
Yeah, that artist, Chase Gentry, we're trying to work something with him. He had a great idea. He wanted to do an adult coloring book. He does a lot of weird creatures, and so he wants to do something clever with those. That will be out around the holidays, I hope, as a gift type thing.
I'm sure it's been tough for you, just like it has been for other artists and business due to COVID. Have you guys transitioned or pivoted in any capacity for picking up physical guides or anything like that? Or how have you come through this process?
With barely our insanity and our sobriety intact, like most people. Actually, this was kind of a good time to start something like this, because we can do most of the work remotely. The toughest thing was getting something printed, but I work with a small guy in town, so he's by himself. So he just kind of stayed open and did his thing. So we were able to get stuff printed. The hardest thing is getting out there and talking to people about this, because there are no zine fests. Without a zine fest, you can't really show your stuff.
And we had initially thought of doing readings or going into places and doing readings, and that just hasn't really been possible, because anywhere you would go to do a reading has been operating totally differently.
Yeah, so like music venues, it's, just not... We're working it out. We've got our stuff in some bookstores across the state, and one in Winona. And the zine that came out in September is the one that we had 100 different covers printed by a local artist in Winona, Dirk Nelson, and beautiful monoprints. Just as a collection, it's pretty gorgeous.
Yeah, it's our first color issue. We
had 2 other artists in it, Landon Shealy, which everybody in La Crosse knows.
And then Jacob Swager, he's Minneapolis. He's a guitar builder, but I've known him for a long time, and he's always been someone who draws. So we have some of his drawings.
And that publication is called Four Eyes, Foreyes.
So what's something that you're really excited about that's coming next?
Which one? We have so many.
That's good to hear.
Well, because we sit around, we talk, might have a glass of wine, and then we come up with ideas. So it's fun.
Yeah, I would say the one that I would like to get going would be more of we have a few ideas for more serialized concepts, something that you start the story in one zine and then you build and create a larger narrative with these smaller pieces. It kind of harkens back to older ways of publishing, but it also, we've talked many times about just publishing some of our conversations we have, because of the way they move from point A to point B in
Actually, it's more like point A to point G.
Yeah. But like, we've thought about creating characters out of ourselves, just as like sort of like cartoon characters almost, or like graphic novel type characters. And then I've also been working on something of my own that we talked about serializing. We have Chase's thing. Well, one time with a couple different prison writers, and that was really, really cool to work with them. So we've had some other interest in that area, so it'd be cool if we kept doing that. There's so much.
It's boundless, really. I mean, if we can think of it and figure out a way to do it, we're going to do it. Any creative person out there who's got any sort of ideas, feel free to float them by us, because you never know.
That's awesome. So speaking of that, if someone wants to submit something, just follow along, where can people find out more?
Just go to our website, ope.pub. There's submission forms there. Our emails are there. There's a phone number. We'll take snail mail. The address is there. Submit away.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Locals. Subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.